Hi friends and book lovers, welcome. I am really excited about today's video because I am finally doing my review on Dragonbird in the Fern by Laura Ruckert. This is a fantasy romance young adult novel that I was able to read as I received it as an ARC by NetGalley, and I thought I would do a dedicated review to it because it sounded really intriguing. I hadn't heard too much about it on like BookTube or Bookstagram that much, except for really recently when the release date was, which I think was August 3rd, and I wanted to add my own review to the pile and see how I found it, so I had scheduled today's video to be a solo review for this novel. So I'll start off by discussing what exactly this novel is about. It starts off in Azaria, which is one of our lands. We are following this princess whose older sister has just died. Her spirit is living on in this land and kind of violently cursing people and hurting people. As the spirit gets older, the more violence she can inflict, and usually it's towards her family until they avenge her murder. So Giara, our main character, is trying to find out who murdered her sister and trying to avenge her murder. Now that Giara's older sister Stella is dead, Giara is also supposed to take her place as the new queen to another kingdom in order to create a peace treaty between their two countries. And so thus our story begins, especially because we kind of think the killer is from the land of her newly betrothed king. So that's how our story starts. A lot of mystery, a lot of intrigue, and a lot of things happening, especially as we get into the story. So we get kind of dropped right into the story itself. So I usually do these reviews by discussing 5 main sections which are really important to me. I discuss world building, characters, plot, writing style, and then overall enjoyability of the novel itself. And then I give my star rating at the end. I'm also gonna add a should you read this at the end of the review to see if this would be something that you would be interested in. But I do want to say that this has learning disability rep and also LGBTQ rep in it as well, which I thought was really great and also quite unexpected. It does go into learning disabilities such as dyslexia quite a lot and in detail, which is something that I myself have not experienced, but it was really cool to read it in a fantasy novel because I haven't seen that kind of learning disability discussed in a fantasy novel before. So that was a challenge our main character had to overcome as well, that you learn as you read along with it. It's not a big spoiler, but it's definitely something that becomes a part of the story and a part of the character's growth. So for this review, I'll start off with world building, and world building is a really big important component to any fantasy novel for me because I love high fantasy and epic fantasy, and I love being immersed into a new world. This story, I believe, is going to be a standalone. I don't think it has any future sequels. However, I did find, unfortunately, that the world building was lacking. We had 3 or 4 different lands we were dealing with, but the differences and main components of each land, as well as their faith, their religion, their beliefs, and their values, was not super clearly outlined. It was almost like a casual footnote, like, oh yes, and this country doesn't believe like our country, they believe X. And it was very short and it wasn't enough information. Towards the end of the novel, you get more information in terms of the beliefs, especially the new country that Giara is now residing in as their queen. I didn't feel like I got a very good understanding of the lore or the beliefs or the values of each country on their own. So that was something that I wish had been better fleshed out. I also just wish the world building in general had been better done because the new country that Giara is now a part of, which I think is called Farnskag, is such an interesting country just by the tidbits we're given, but we don't go into the lore. Like, they have these mounts which are like elephant bird mounts type of things, but we don't really get to learn about them or learn about their training or learn about what kind of animal they are, why they're important. We just know that they are these different creatures that exist in this new land, and that's just an example to give you that doesn't make a lot of sense. Or the fact that her older sister becomes a ghost and an earthwalker. We got a little bit of lore behind that, but not a lot. I just wish that the world building was better fleshed out. We got a little bit, you know, we got enough to understand the plot. We didn't get enough to really immerse yourself in a story. I personally didn't feel as immersed in the story. And then I'll jump right to writing style, because I think the writing style is descriptive, but it's not cohesive. Like, it's not all tied together. The descriptions don't go from like world building to then setting to then situation. It's kind of like enough detail for you to know about the plot, but not enough to immerse yourself. So I found myself interested in what was going to happen next, but I didn't find myself fully immersed, fully in like a reading flow like I would with another novel that I would find immersive. But the writing style, at least the rest of the writing style, while it wasn't like super descriptive and there wasn't a ton of world building involved and it wasn't super immersive, it was still very achievable. It was something that I can see young readers really finding easy to grasp, but I think it's written in a young reader reading level. So I think for that, definitely kudos, because I think it can be difficult to write for young readers, and especially that age range. I think anyone in a young adult, younger reader age range will find this really accessible, really easy to read, really digestible in that manner. So I thought that that was really great in terms of the writing style. I just wish there was a little bit more description, a little bit more world building and immersiveness. And I think the writing style and the world building kind of tied together in those two things. But in terms of accessibility and understanding, I thought the writing style was really great that way. It wasn't personally a writing style that I love, but I did find it easy to understand. So I could definitely read more of her novels when she comes out with more of them, because I do think that this is her debut novel. So I will get into the character work. Now, I am a character-driven reader, but also a plot-driven reader. I need to have a good balance of both. I felt like in this novel, we got to experience our characters. We got to see them get to know each other, especially Giara and her betrothed, which was Rafar. And we got to see the other more villainous characters, and we got to kind of hear about them a little bit. I would have loved to know more background about our villainous characters and kind of like what got them there and what got them to that mindset, because villains don't really feel like real villains to me anymore unless I really have a good understanding of what their backstory is, which isn't always possible, but at least enough of a backstory is possible for a villain to really understand their motives, because I didn't really feel like I could understand like the villain's motives in this novel. Even with King Rafar, you know, we hear his story about how he became a very young king, etc. You hear that at the very beginning, and you get more details and pieces of that as the story goes along, but that's really all you get. You just kind of get told like, oh, he is a young king and he has gone through all the ABCD young king obstacles. But that's not really enough. Like, I don't get to know really who he is, how he is. You get to see a little bit of the king when he interacts with Giara, and you get to see a little bit of who Giara is and what she values and how she overcomes things as a young woman, but it's not enough character work. I don't have enough background. I don't feel like we spend enough time with the characters and understanding them or falling in love with them. So while I was rooting for Giara and Rafar and I really enjoyed them as characters, I didn't completely fall in love with them. There were definitely certain pieces of character work and characters that were missing for me. So I think that that could have been more fleshed out as well. I know that this is a young adult novel, so things won't always be super fleshed out, but I have, read young adult novels that the characters and the world building are very fleshed out. So I have a bit of a higher expectation. Now, this is a debut novel, so hopefully that will become more fleshed out with more books that the author does write, but I did feel a void when it came to character work and what needed to be fleshed out. The next thing's plot, and honestly, plot is 5 out of 5. Plot was so well done. It was so clear. It was always moving. We got dropped into the world, and as soon as we got dropped into the world, we just ran with it. Giara was gonna be betrothed and start going to her new kingdom, and it's basically the synopsis, but we just started there and it just flew by. There were so many things, there were so many pieces, there was some high stakes, the young adult kind of high stakes. There was a lot of moments where you weren't really sure what was gonna happen. There were definitely some twists that I didn't see coming. And so I felt like the plot was great. It was fast paced. It was action-packed. I was never bored. I became really invested around the 50% mark, I would say. Before that, I was invested, I was interested, but I became more invested, more page-turning at the 50% mark. And then I think at the second half of the book, I was able to read it in a day or so because I was just so intrigued and invested with what I had already learned and where the story itself was going. So that was really exciting. I really did enjoy that part of the novel, and I thought the plot was just really well done. And I think considering that this is a young adult level book. The plot might just be one of those things that's just more important in this kind of reading level, but I did find that it moves really quickly. So I do think this would be really well suited to a young adult reader that really loves a fast-paced, interesting, mysterious, like dangerous plot. I think that would go really well with a reader like that. And honestly, it went well with a reader like me too. I really had a lot of fun reading it, especially for the plot, which takes us into the enjoyability of the novel. And I think the enjoyability of the novel for me does really stem with the first 4 points. I really have to love the world building and the character work and the writing style and the plot to really enjoy the novel. I did find it to be a really fun read. I would recommend this to a young reader or any reader that's really plot driven who likes a little bit of romance in the novel, because this novel does have a subplot of romance, and that was really fun and interesting to read. It was all very chaste and done very well for a YA read, so nothing really smutty and nothing really sultry, but it was all just very tastefully done and definitely very appropriately done for the reading level that it was for. But I really did enjoy the romance. I thought it was really cute and sweet, and then also tumultuous and just like very heartfelt, that I really did get involved with that. So I loved that part of the novel. I loved the politics. This novel has a lot of political intrigue, which I didn't mention in the plot section, but it has a ton of political intrigue, a lot more political intrigue than I thought was going to be involved. We didn't get all the details how they became tense, but we did understand that they were tense and that there were, you know, peace to be had and to be discussed between the countries and things like this. There was just so much political tension and political intrigue and political strategy, and I thought that was really well done. And I loved seeing our main character get involved in that political strategy, whereas before she didn't seem like she felt that she had a head for it. So I really loved that part. Really great if you like a fast-paced, action-packed, politically intriguing novel with a romance subplot. But just beware that the world building and the character work is a little more thin than you might expect from another high fantasy novel. So my rating for this is a 3.5 stars. I found it really enjoyable. Although I did find it really fun, I wish there was more world building and more character work and that the writing style was a little more fleshed out. But definitely 3.5 overall for this novel. If you're a young reader or you love reading YA with some romance subplots and a really good fast-paced action-packed plot, and you don't mind if the world building is just enough and if the character work is a little thin, then I think that you would really enjoy this novel. I would definitely recommend it to a reader like that, and I would definitely recommend it to a young adult reader that likes a little bit of fantasy and likes a little bit of romance and is getting into and likes fast-paced action-packed novels. So that's my review for Dragonbird and the Fern. I hope that you enjoyed this review. Take a look at some of my other reviews that I've done for other adult and young adult fantasy novels. I really hope that you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please give it a like. And if you like this content and you want to see more content from me, please don't hesitate to subscribe.